Welcome to the Insights solo episodes of the Culture and Leadership Connections podcast. My name is Marie Gervais. If you're passionate about gleaning leadership gems from others and delight at the capacity of the human spirit to survive and thrive, this is the show for you. After interviewing 100 plus guests from diverse cultures and professions, I have learned a thing or two about what makes successful people tick and effective managers lead. In each episode, I elaborate on one or several of the themes sparked by Culture and Leadership Connections guests and reflect on how these motifs can help us all be better humans. Join me as we contribute to the leadership discourse by elevating thought around the cultures and leadership themes that influence management and work. And now for today's episode. Hello, Culture and Leadership Connections podcast listeners, and welcome to episode 5 of the Insights solo podcast called Overcoming the Pain of Career Trauma. Work wounds are not always visible from the outside. Consider the visible minority teacher whose principal interrupts her grade 4 math lesson to whisper what he would like to do to her in bed. Or the immigrant in a meat plant whose supervisor refuses to let him go to the bathroom and then laughs to see a grown man wet himself at work. What about receiving a negative work evaluation and a lowered salary by someone who has never met you or seen your work? Or being passed over for promotion in favor of the boss's nephew because blood ties always trump competence? And who hasn't experienced being burnt out by unrealistic work demands or being obligated to train someone who's then given their job? No matter where you are on the intensity scale of work wounds, the result is a moral and emotional wound that causes you to feel less competent, less worthy, and to second guess yourself to the point of distress. That teacher in the first example was my colleague. The immigrant in the meat plant told me his story the day after it happened. The employee receiving a negative evaluation and salary decrease was my father. The demoralized employees who don't advance without blood ties to the boss are the majority of companies I work with as a leadership trainer. And that person who was burnt out and obligated to train someone who was then given her job, that was me. Healing the pain of work wounds matters to me. Emotional safety at work matters to me. According to Employment and Social Development Canada, some of the main risk factors for poor workplace psychological safety include high demand with low control, high effort with low reward, unfair treatment, excessive workload, unfulfilling work, harassment and discrimination, abuse of authority, and no professional development opportunities. The report Workplace Mental Health, a review and recommendations by the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health, cited that an average of 500,000 Canadians of all ages do not go to work daily due to workplace psychological, read emotional workplace safety issues. An updated 2023 report stated, a mental health emergency is affecting Canadian organizations to the tune of $200 billion each year. For younger workers, the impact is even greater, as 40% of those between 18 to 34 are burned out and at a well-being breaking point. Although there has been a national standard for psychological health and safety in the workplace since 2016, and more employees are claiming insurance compensation for toxic workplace conditions, none of these assurances will help us heal the cumulative effect of hidden workplace trauma. As a result, our nervous systems develop hypervigilance to danger cues and numbed ability to pick up on safety cues, causing increased paranoia and anxiety. Conversely, learning to detect emotional safety cues and create a climate of safety are key to healing career trauma. Here's how it works from a brain perspective. According to Dr. Stephen Porges' excellent research on polyvagal theory, when you develop the ability to detect your emotions and your body sensations, emotion related to a recent unpleasant memory no longer activates your amygdala's threat reaction. In both career trauma coaching and therapy, as the emotion from the recent memory is released, you are less likely to be unconsciously flooded by the unpleasant emotions from other past situations. So without having to go back and relive past traumas, freeing the emotion from a recent, less urgent incident has a domino healing effect. You feel calmer, more balanced, grounded, and as a result, you more accurately perceive the situation at hand rather than distorted through the lens of a past trigger. But this sounds great. How can you get started with healing work trauma on your own? I would like to share with you 3 simple ways to start your own career trauma healing journey. It is about intentionally doing things human beings do naturally, but have stopped doing due to anxiety, cumulative stress, trauma, and other issues. They are 1. Breathe intentionally. 2. Move. 3, connect with other people. Doesn't that sound too simple? Well, let me explain a little bit more. Breathing intentionally means paying attention to your breath. The reason this works is because it diverts the amygdala's attention from threat response to safety response. As you're listening to me talk, just focus on your own breath, consciously slowing down the inhale and the exhale. Notice your breathing for a couple of inhales and exhales. And together, let's all take a gentle inhale and exhale as a group of listeners. This is called co-regulation because we are tuning to other people. Try it again with your eyes closed. How do you feel? Did you notice the atmosphere in the room change? This even works on a Zoom call. Let me give you an example. I once had a group of oil field managers in a virtual training show up distracted and angry. Before I could even ask what was going on, one manager started to have a meltdown. He said, "I don't have time for this. We just lost a worker. I have a father with dementia and 2 disabled boys, and I'm freaking losing my mind, and I do not have time for this." I said, "You certainly do not have time for this," and just waited while he stopped his rant. When he stopped talking, I asked, "Do you maybe have time for one breath?" He seemed surprised and said, "Well, yeah, I guess I have time for one breath." So I just said, "Right, let's inhale and exhale." He was visibly calmer. I asked if it would be okay for the group to take one more breath together, which they did. They all calmed down. One of the other managers said, "Could we do that one more time?" And we did it a third time. The manager who had just lost his temper said, "One of our people just drowned when his machine fell into a tailings pond." Imagine seeing that. Can you see how that trauma triggered all the other stresses in his life? But one breath brought him back to the moment, and 2 more emotionally regulated the whole group. That's the power of intentional breath. Now, the second one is movement. If we don't move when the nervous system feels trapped or tired, we become dysregulated. The body feels trapped, and it can't move when it feels distressed. So what does your body need to do in this moment? Does it need to stretch, jump, leave the room, walk down the hall? Learning to perceive and honor your body's need for movement brings nervous system regulation. Consider dogs. Dogs get up, stretch, and shake. And that same thing applies to us. If a dog gets into a fight with another dog, it sits alone to rest and heal, and then it stretches, shakes it off, and gets back to being a dog. What if you told your dog to just stop stretching and shaking? Not likely to happen. Dogs don't force themselves to work until they drop either. Have you ever heard someone say, "I just wish my dog would stop working so hard and get some rest. If he would just go to bed at a decent hour, he wouldn't be so snarky"? Ever heard anybody say that about their dog? Dogs know how to regulate themselves. When you're tempted to stay another hour at work, binge watch movies, or skip a meal, ask yourself, would my dog do this? We are mammals too, and we need to move and balance movement with rest to stay emotionally regulated. So first, breathe intentionally. Second, move. Not much, just move. And the third one is connection. So notice when people start moving, as you did when you stretched, when I mentioned stretch, if you're in a room with other people, you start naturally connecting. Your eyes meet, you smile, or you might say a few casual words. That's the power of social connection, and it is absolutely essential to healing career trauma. When people are in the midst of trauma, they feel isolated and alone. One US study said that expectations of loneliness will cut off 9 years of a person's life because it's so debilitating. So social connection is really important. There are 5 blue zone areas in the world. In those blue zones, people in the whole community live happier, healthier, and longer than the rest of the world. They do have disease and difficulties, but as a community, they tend to be happier, healthier, and live longer. One of the things they have in common is social connection. Human beings are wired to connect because at some level we know that we need each other to survive. In a well-known experiment, babies who saw their mothers change their faces from emotional connection to expressionless disconnection went completely ballistic in less than 2 minutes. They calmed down the moment their mothers looked at them and smiled. That's connection. In these blue zones in the world, people regularly meet others in the course of their daily activities. The young and the elderly have multiple caregivers who check in on them regularly. To stay regulated, we need to connect with other people. Talk to people. Share our joys, our problems, the highs and the lows. In conclusion, career trauma significantly disrupts our nervous systems, physical and mental health, and the ability to be productive on the job. Although working with career trauma in a coaching or therapy situation can significantly impact your situation for the better, the way to start and sustain this healing process yourself is to intentionally do the 3 things we talked about in detail. Remember, breathe, move, and connect with other people, and you will be on your way to healing career trauma. Thank you for listening, and may Culture and Leadership Connections continue to guide and inspire your day. Newsflash! Listeners can now interact with Culture and Leadership Connections podcast by leaving a voice or text message on Fan List. It is a fun and quick way to let me know what you liked, ask a question, or leave a suggestion. I will feature some of the voice messages on upcoming episodes. You might be surprised to hear your own voice, but only if you leave a message, of course. So to leave your personal message or your question, go to shiftworkplace.com/podcast and click on the Fan List link to leave it. I can hardly wait to hear what you have to say.